misconception is that when you go to therapy, you have a problem or you are a problem. And I would say that is almost an innate fear that happens because little children will have it too. And I'm very quick to say that all we're doing in therapy is creating tools.
Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate your time. And I was going through your organization website, Happy Brain Counseling. But before we get to what Happy Brains does, I think it would be great for our listeners to know a little bit about yourself. If you don't mind explaining your professional journey and what experience do you have working in healthcare space, and then if we can connect that with vision and mission behind your current organization, I think that could be a good starting point for us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I like the opportunity to do these. My professional journey started later than most people's. I think this is important because it took me longer to get where I wanted to be, but it allowed me to have more of a seasoned professional experience when I arrived. Originally, I planned on going into financial planning or something math based, and I nearly completed an accounting major and a music minor when something very hard happened in my family. And that experience really shifted everything for me professionally. I became very interested in understanding the mind body connection, how trauma lives in the body, how stress manages the brain and the body, how emotions show up physically. And that curiosity turned into a kind of a complete educational pivot from accounting to psychology. I did work in the healthcare industry as a business manager for years. So I knew that world as well. But my education is in psychology. Along the way, I worked myself through school as a business manager in several different fields and as a paralegal. That turned out to be incredibly important later, I think, because most therapists, myself included, have enormous compassion for the clients, and the business side of therapy is often the hardest part for them. And I believe the business model really helped me to survive and to grow. I've also been able to support clients by having a knowledge of the business world and to help clients that are CEOs and C suite, things like that. When I looked at other practices, the pay structure wasn't sustainable for someone supporting a family. So after I finished my graduate degree in counseling and family therapy and completed supervision and an MBA, I stepped away from business management and kind of all around the same time. And I opened my own practice. I was always planning to open my own business, and I'd worked hard on paperwork and the business model as I went through counseling and an MBA graduate degrees. From the very beginning, I knew I wanted Happy Brain to be grounded in neuroscience. I'm a huge admirer of Bruce Perry and Dan Siegel and Ed Tronick, whose work helped shape how we understand trauma and attachment and emotion regulation. The name Happy Brain comes from that foundation, the belief that when the brain feels safe and regulated, that life improves. So one of my early employees added the tagline Happy Brain, Happy Life, and that stuck because I think it's true. And our core vision is simple, but I think it's powerful to help people feel better and move forward with healthier family and peer relationships, thereby helping the community. So we really focus on autonomy, healing, and growth, not creating lifelong dependency on therapy. So we're constantly educating ourselves as clinicians so we can help people heal more efficiently. That doesn't mean every client or family is going to heal fast, but that's our guiding principle. And I think it's really important to me that our clinicians challenge themselves to continue learning. And I believe those techniques and specialties like NET are the most important part of our practice. And one last thing, I sought to help Happy Brain employees have their own autonomy and niche. I think that helped us have a healthy practice where each professional has his or her own specialty, like autism or couples or hypnosis. I think those things provide internal support for the group and reduces competition. So, supporting the providers to heal is part of the vision. As therapists, we have to be mentally and emotionally steady to heal from our own hardships and to practice what we preach. So, I believe the huge part of the vision has been to support our clinicians emotionally as well as our clients.
Understood. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's really powerful. And when you are going through, you are explaining your all the previous uh, work experience and educational history. Uh, it came to me that we talk to many founders and many CEOs, and usually people are expert in one field. For example, they are a clinician, then they start a company, they start an organization, and then they learn to be a founder or a business expert. I think you are more prepared to run not only the clinician side of your business, but also the other challenges that come along as a leader, which you have to encounter on daily basis, being a founder, being an operational leader. So it is really inspiring journey and background you have. And I wanted to ask you about a little bit more about Happy Brains. Sounds like there are a lot of things you are trying to do differently than the typical practices that are out there. So I want to learn from you, what are the spectrum of services you are offering right now in your space, and who exactly are your patients, if we say, are there folks from any specific age groups, or you are treating individuals from different age groups as well in your practice at the moment?
Yeah, we really have work to be informed so that we can treat anything. Um, we've been informed to treat personality disorders. A lot of practitioners have moved away from that, but I think that's on the grow and on the move, like Bill Eddy says. And so we've been very informed in that. We've have a specialist who does autism, and we have kind of a unique approach to autism where we score them in many different areas, and we provide a report to the doctors in the schools to really help the treatment team work with the child and know what we're doing. And then we provide some tools called integrated listening systems that really helps with the nervous system, because the research has shown that the nervous system really affects the way autism shows up. And we've had a lot of success using the therapy, a therapist who's trained to treat autism, and then these other tools. Our whole office specializes in emotion regulation. So normal talk therapy, you're actually re-traumatizing when you're talking. And we've always been in search of how you prevent that, or at least de-escalate that. So we learned a lot of techniques along the way, but the ones that have really landed the best for me has been NET. It took me a lot of time and energy and money to learn how to do it, but wow, it's taken like really hard traumas and things like that down to a few weeks. It's really effective, and it's basically neutralizing the stressors and really working from that front. And then that helps me with the types of things, the specialties that we have. So, like, I treat parental alienation and estrangement, which is all about stress and going to court and things like that. And it really helps me, instead of being confrontational, to support clients by working on the stress, which is a lot nicer. And we have other specialties like hypnosis and things like that. So everybody kind of does their own thing. Um,
That's great. And it's really a wide spectrum of services you are providing. And when you were explaining this, something came to my mind that honestly, you and your team has a lot to offer to community in terms of guidance and awareness, because a lot of things you mentioned, there is not whole lot of awareness out there in terms of good content or explaining all these things. Is this something on your roadmap as well? Because I believe that getting some content out, whether in video format or any other format, especially around awareness of different areas of mental health, I think you and your team has a lot to contribute to society. Are you looking at something or? you guys are already doing something in this regard, like creating content, awareness content, and publishing it out on internet.
So honestly, we have been doing that. I like podcasts, and our website has a lot of information on some of the techniques like emotion code and NET and hypnosis um, and autism. And we've produced brochures and pamphlets and things like that and gotten those to local schools. And then we do podcasts. I will say that meeting with you has really helped me in the podcast realm because I used Audition before and it's very difficult to use, and I'm going to switch to this.
And honestly, this is a purpose for conversation like this. Our whole purpose and vision is that, okay, let's go and create a good, rich knowledge base for experiences from founders, because what you have to contribute and share is probably not documented or not available anywhere. There are like typical stuff, technical stuff available out there, but your experiences and your vision and your passion, and folks like yourself, I think they need to be showcased more and more. Their stories need to be told more, so that it should be available online and people should be able to learn and get inspiration from them. So yeah, I think let's keep building a community like this and awareness of this. So I want to go on to my next question, and especially working in mental health space, there are a lot of misconceptions that still exist in terms of care with respect to mental health. Anything that comes to your mind? Are there any typical misconceptions that you run into quite oftenly that you want to highlight today?
Yes, and thank you for asking that question. I would say the biggest misconception is that when you go to therapy, you have a problem or you are a problem. And I would say that is almost an innate fear that happens because little children will have it too. And I'm very quick to say that all we're doing in therapy is creating tools. And what's fascinating is when you learn these tools, it will make your life easier, especially your adult life. And once you get there, you're going to recognize that these people around you haven't done their homework and learned their tools. So you'll be thanking your parents because your life is so much easier, and you're making these informed choices like setting boundaries and things like that instead of just being kind of willy-nilly about how you approach life. So I try to emphasize it's just tools, that's it.
And I think the beauty is, especially in mental health space and tools, I think you are making a generational impact. So if you are helping one individual, you are actually not helping that particular individual, you are actually doing a generational impact, and it really impacts the family members, friends, and the whole society around that individual. So I want to quickly dive a little bit into what everyone talks about these days, technology or artificial intelligence, or how technology is advancing. How much you are currently depending on technology to provide care in your practice?
Well, I would say that we use technology every day in our practice. One of the biggest things you use in any kind of mental or medical health is an EHR, some form of record keeping. And, I want to urge people to kind of do the research on that to get into it, from the ground with a company that you like and that's has good customer service, because switching to another one is really awful because, you have to get them to integrate and to seamlessly pull over your patient data, and it's very hard. So we've had to switch once in our 15 years, but um, only once, and we really like Therapy Notes. They really work with you. They've adapted as the times have changed, especially with AI. So many now assessments that used to have to do with paper are now like pulled into the note. And what's so awesome about that is I can very quickly do some assessments so that when I talk to a physician or a pediatrician or a psychiatrist, that I'm able to tell them like what specifically the issues are from those assessments. And I don't have to deep dive into all the different assessments I've done. They're right there in the note. And I can also use that to benchmark and create goals from. So, you know, those things are amazing. Tools like that are amazing. Um, we use a lot of third parties that I also call tools. To me, you've got to have the right people to make the whole thing work. So, we have people that do our website and they do a great job. They're always working on that with us. We have people that clean the office that we can trust that don't, share our information. We have people who create marketing for us, and honestly, good employees as part of that, so that they can help with it. Um, so yes, we do use a lot of tools.
Sounds great. So, are you also doing any sort of virtual care as well? For example, using telehealth or virtual care, or most of your patients are in person?
I was resistant to telehealth until COVID when you had to do it. So we used medical Zoom kind of right away because they let you have more than one person on, and it's very confidential. So that one just seems to work really well. They keep it updated well, and it works smoothly, and it's more expensive. A lot of people will use the free versions and they just don't work well. And I think that's annoying in a session when the technology's not working. And so I've always just stuck with Medical Zoom.
Technology is great only when it works.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you one important question, especially around the same topic we are talking, and I want to know your, especially you will see it from a founder's lens. We talk to mental health experts, and we saw there are two school of thoughts. One school of thought really believes that recording conversations with mental health patients and then using AI to extract another layer of intelligence is really helpful. So, for example, if you are using a virtual, you are communicating virtually, and the conversation is being recorded, then there are a lot of AI tools available that do analysis on that recording, and they give you additional level of insight, which sometimes you as a human can miss, because these AI tools are empowered to do sentiment analysis, and they do a lot of other processing, and they give you a little bit more information or insights about how the patient was behaving during the conversation. So this is one school of thought. Another school of thought we talk to is they are really concerned about the privacy part of conversation, and they feel that this should be done with extreme care, because recording conversation can have privacy concerns as well. So, what's your take on this situation? What do you feel will be the right balance using technology for insight, or I think this is something we all should be very careful with.
So my belief is that you can use it, but you would have to get a release from your clients. And I too feel that it's dangerous to record sessions because um, there are data breaches all the time, and it would be possible. That would be the worst thing ever to have your client's information out there. So, like, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable doing that yet until it had some, you know, history behind it. I have found AI very helpful though in just the day-to-day things. Like as a practitioner, your brain gets tired and you get sloppy with emails and things. And it's been really helpful to run, your thoughts through through Chat GPT or something, and I pay for a private version of that. And, just to get some feedback on a better way to say it. Uh, and, I think we don't want to get lazy and not use our thoughts, you know, not really being careful, to let anything do that for us. But to get some help, I think is powerful. I do like how the AI tools within our logging system is making a lot of things electronic that weren't before.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So, are you looking at, again, on the same subject, are you looking at offboarding some of your administrative or operational burden to AI, maybe in near future, or is there anything like that on your mind to address in future?
Um, we do have tools inside our system that will let use AI to write the note for you. I I'm a little resistant to it yet. Um, I've experimented with it. It's probably better for us as far as insurance, but not as good as far as content. You got to program it with the content, and I'm a little worried that if we don't tailor it right, that our you know, we'll all get sloppy with that and not have the right content there. So I'm just careful with it.
That's absolutely right approach. So I think you might have lot of things to do with respect to being compliance or audit ready. For example, documentations, having the right evidences and stuff in place. How big of a challenge is this to you as a founder, keeping yourself ready for any kind of audits or having keeping yourself ready for compliance related stuff?
I think that's always something you have to be ready for. We take insurance, and you know there are regular requests for our notes to audit them, and that gets benchmarked by people that don't know your client, and they will withhold services and paying for it if you haven't documented the need. So, we have regular staff meetings and talk about documentation, both legally, because our records are requested sometimes, and for insurance companies.
Right, absolutely. So trying to understand the landscape of your practice. I believe that you have a team of clinicians with you, and likewise, you are also getting some external help from vendors with respect to technology implementation, or using technology, or improving the overall workflow of your organization. Uh, is this the correct assumption? If so, do you have any other systems integrated with your EMR as well right now in order to facilitate a lot of communications with other healthcare entities or agencies out there, or integration is right now not something on your plan?
Well, I would say besides the big things like therapy notes and medical Zoom, and then whatever the podcasting software you use, I I mostly just collaborate with other third parties to do those other things. Like, I have an excellent accountant. I've kind of steered away from a payroll software. So my accountant kind of helps me do that. I do use, Zelly and Venmo and things like that for help. Um, I also have a third party that does a website, like I mentioned. I have a third party who does letterhead and envelopes and marketing. And then we have brokers who handle all kinds of insurance things that we need. And then another third party that does 401k. So a lot of third parties that have their own technology. But I do look for third parties that have good technology, because some of them don't want to work with Apple and things like that.
Yeah, of course, it's a diverse ecosystem. So
Right,
it's not possible to get everything done under one roof or with one team. So
right.
I want to ask you a little bit challenging question. In your day-to-day work, what are the typical frustrations or challenges that come up for you? But if you don't mind answering it from the perspective of operations and from the perspective of being a clinician. So if you have to explain one challenge or frustration that comes up to you quite often as a clinician, and one challenge that you have to explain as a operational leader or a founder, what those challenges would be.
Without hesitation, it's one thing, it's insurance. Our business model is built on access, and we want everyone who needs help to be able to get it. So we accept insurance, everyone but me. And that's a cash flow decision because insurance will not pay sometimes for over a year.
Yes.
And it's a lot of hours for your office management to get that to work. And it is also a very challenging situation for the clinician. Like, I used to spend hours on the phone with one of the insurance providers where they would get my records every time, and then they would schedule someone to interview me and determine if this was necessary, if they could find a free way to treat this person. And it took a lot of time and energy from me, and, it also, you know, takes a lot of time and energy from my office manager every day. So, it's definitely insurance.
Got it, yeah. So, are you using any tools or any software right now? Basically, some organizations what they're doing is they have adopted some tools or software that gives you a little bit better insight before submitting insurance claims and stuff, because they give you a score of, okay, are there going to be a lot of questions, or if this will be delayed, or are there any red flags about this claim. Do you have anything right now in place or integrated that maybe helps you with streamlining insurance related day-to-day stuff, or you are currently handling it via human interventions 100%?
It's both. We our software has, um, a lot of different like verifications that this is actually an insurance plan that they have. We do that up front, and it doesn't take very long the way it's run. You can't always trust it, to be quite honest. And we also have like once you submit the claims. It tells you if it's been denied pretty quickly and why. And then we have an external electronic system called Availity that provides more information. But those are really the two we use.
Got it.
All of those things are expensive, to be honest.
I know. I know they are continuous cost on your end. So I want to ask you about your big picture vision, 2 years or 3 years from now on, where you want Happy Brain to be. What was the big picture vision for you, for your organization?
Well, recently I opened a second practice location on a big piece of property. And so over the next few years, my goal is to have some exceptional clinicians there and to have that office thriving. And I want to open, um, I want those clinicians to have a variety of training. That's kind of unusual. So that takes some time to get your clinicians trained in the different tools we use in Kirkwood. And then I plan to open an addiction clinic on that location that offers equestrian therapy. So the vision is to rescue horses and to integrate that into the addiction treatment so that the patient gets to heal alongside animals and truly learn what that recovery process and rebuilding trust looks like. There's really something profoundly regulating about using horses and dogs, honestly. I have an office dog and a bird that I bring with me. It's quite impressive what I can teach with animals that I can't teach as fast with my words. So I believe in that model. I have horses and they're my safe space. That's how I survive and thrive.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing this. Last question from my end. I promise we are just completing our allocated time. When you bring somebody on board as your team member or employee, I'm sure there is a whole field of onboarding employees and making sure they align with your core values and they understand the patient centricity above everything else. So, what is your mantra? What is your go-to procedures to make sure that the team member who are onboarding with you align with your organization vision as quickly as possible?
One of the things that I ask people, and you can see pretty quickly, like they won't last if they're not willing to do this, is I I require that people learn and continue to challenge themselves. Some people aren't wanting to do that, like they're like, I'm done with school and I kind of don't want to keep going. And am very I require a lot of studying, so we study together as a team, and we, I have clinicians do their own sort of training to learn these skills, and like emotion work is kind of a hard thing to learn, and a lot of people don't want to do it. So that's part of how I onboard people, so that they're challenged professionally to be really good at what they do and really um, healing with people. And then a, a second side is I'm a lean, which is a science-based practice that reduces waste or wasted time, and Six Sigma practitioner. Those are two tools I learned in the business world. Six Sigma is like everyone knows their roles and they do those efficiently and timely. So you know, I start people out on those formats. I don't want a messy office. I want things clean and neat, and I want our notes done on time. That causes a lot of provider stress when people get behind. And so I really tend to help providers emotionally too. And I have honestly found that training providers is a better way to do that than getting somebody who's already developed a lot of bad habits.
Right. Absolutely. We are almost little over our time, but this conversation was so great. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for enlightening on a lot of areas which are not usually talked about. And I'm sure we have a lot more to talk. Maybe whenever your schedule allows, we can do another episode of this because I also want to talk to you about the burnout, the things we can do to avoid burnout in healthcare professionals and all those things. There are a lot of other areas which, of course, we can talk more and we can benefit from your experience. But this have been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking out time, sharing your journey with us, and inspiring us. We look forward to getting your story out in the public. And in meanwhile, if you have any question for me, please feel free to ask me.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you doing this. This is lovely. If somebody could read, starting to get into this practice, if they could look at a video and figure some things out easier, that would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Absolutely. Thank you so much.